Okay, so again, welcome. You're here to learn about grant writing. So what we'll cover today in the next hour is I'll give you a small overview of the Business Tasmania Service. And when I say small, there are so many fantastic things that the service with which I manage, delivered through the Department of State Growth for the Tasmanian Government. So many things that we can do to help you, but I'll just focus on a few core elements today. You'll also hear about the Tasmanian Business Advice Service and how you can access great support there. And of course, how to find grants, which everyone wants to know about, and how to write a winning grant application. So Business Tasmania, so we exist to make your life as easy as possible to get started and to run your business. So we offer a statewide service and we are open to help everyone across Tasmania, regardless of where you are. You can come to us for a whole range of support from the very early idea stage of running your business through to starting your business, every stage from then on, right through to exiting your business. So we're there for you every step of the way. We save you time. We save you money by doing that. We save you stress. And we're so very passionate about doing the best for every customer that comes our way. Any industry. And most of our people who come to us are small, but because the majority of businesses in Tasmania are small businesses. So we do lots of different things. Okay. I guess you could think of us as being the front door to access government support because the state government and the Australian government is very large, lots of different parts of it. And so we actually can connect you with suitable services and programs, different areas within government, in addition to ourselves, to support you and to help you to, it might be to overcome a challenge, it might be for a new idea, you might be doing something, exporting for the first time. So many different things. We make advice, connections, and referrals. We run events like this, but also face-to-face events. So if you ever have an idea about an event you'd like us to run, we'd love to hear from you. We have digital coaches that you can access through our Australian government colleagues and business advisors, which I'll talk to very shortly. So we are the point of contact for grant programs delivered through the Department of State Growth, many of those, but we also know what's available in terms of other options such as loan programs. So I just wanted to mention that we do also assist with inquiries related to loans delivered through our department. We're not focusing on loans today, but I just wanted to let you know that is also an option that assists some businesses as well. So I'd like to highlight the Tasmanian Business Advice Service. So all around the state, we have a next network of very experienced business people who we contract to deliver our services, the Tasmanian Business Advice Service and the new Business Support Pilot Program. So these are two fantastic offerings that again are available statewide. If you are thinking of starting a business, or have held an ABN, Australian business number, I should say, for less than 12 months, you can access 2 hours of free advice through the new Business Support Pilot Program to get you started. Then once your Australian business number has sort of clocked over to 12 months, you can then go on to access 5 hours of free advice each financial year. And so the advice that you can receive from these fantastic organisations all around the state who we contract to deliver face-to-face advice to you. You can see advisors face-to-face. You can choose who you want to see. And on the website, the Tasmania Business Advice website, which is right here, or you can scan the QR code, you can actually read the bios of all of our advisors and then you can choose who you would like to see. You can look at their experience and you can go and you can work out who you think is the best fit for you. If you choose someone who's at the other end of the state than you can have an online meeting. But it's just a really great flexible model in that you can choose who you want to see to meet your needs and your business's needs. Now, a lot of people go and access the advice services for many, many different reasons. And it could be you're thinking of starting a business, you might be in business and you want to employ someone for the first time, you might have a cash flow challenge or an idea to diversify. It's really quite broad in terms of anything business related. You can actually access free advice from them, and it's at no cost that you can access that service each financial year. The reason I wanted to share this with you today is that if you find a grant that you're eligible to apply for, you can actually access the advice service for those free hours for assistance with your grant application. So I wanted to flag this with you because it links in beautifully with grant writing. So that's a good offering to keep in mind. So if we move on, so why Business Tasmania? So why am I here talking to you about grants? And I sort of touched on earlier that we are the point of contact, the people that you call or email or chat to at face-to-face events about grant opportunities. So the Business Tasmania team who assist you on the phone line, we're listening, we're helping you to understand guidelines, we're helping to answer the questions that you have, and through that process of any stage of the grant application process and finding out the outcomes, we're talking with you all the time. So we're hearing about challenges that you might find in terms of approaching a grant application. So yeah, so we're talking to you all the time, and we're listening and looking at ways in which we can help people within our department to understand how to continue to improve on grant application processes. So yeah, so I guess we're in this space all the time, and so that's why we have learnt so much from our conversations with you, and learnt so much from all the grant programs that we deal with. So that's why we have a lot of great things to share with you today about it. So, what is a grant? And I like to touch on this because when I've been out and about talking to people, not everyone understands that a grant is not a loan. A grant is money that you do not need to pay back. So, a grant is money that has been made available for a specific purpose. So, depending on who the organisation is, if it's local council, they might, as the slide indicates, they might have a particular project that they want delivered. Within state government, there'll be a whole host of reasons that money is made available for a particular purpose. And it could well be for upskilling, it could be to help businesses overcome a particular challenge, it could be for a whole host of reasons. So, yeah, so a grant is available and made available for you to apply for a very specific purpose. Types of grants? And so I'd like to highlight, and for some of you who've seen grant programs before, you might feel quite comfortable with the difference here, but I want to just talk through the reason why some grants are competitive and some grants are not competitive. Okay, so what you will find with competitive grants is that often a competitive grant is for larger sums of money. So if you're seeing grants, say as an example, $50,000 or more, or perhaps 25 and up, larger amounts of money, typically they will be a competitive grant that is open for a set period of time, and in which you then have everyone has the same amount of time to complete an application, by which you have eligibility and assessment criteria, which I'll talk more to as we go on. And basically with that, every application, once the program closes, is then assessed by an independent panel individually. Then the panel convenes as a group. Then they all discuss every application. Then they rank every application. And then there are recommendations put forward. So what you will find is that when there are smaller grant amounts, perhaps 5, 10,000, roughly, you will find that they are not competitive. So it would be very difficult for a panel of a competitive grant program to assess if, say, for example, if it was a grant for $10,000 and it was open to, as an example, cafes to apply for upgrading their new coffee machines. It would be really challenging for a panel to assess who is more deserving of that coffee machine, if that makes sense. And also with competitive grants, another reason why for smaller amounts they are not typically competitive is that because it's open for a set period of time, as an example, if there were 3,000 applications received during that period and there was only funding enough for 200 applications, then 2,800 businesses have really used a lot of their own time, or their time, wasted time, and everyone is so time poor putting in that application. I just wanted to talk to that a little bit. Non-competitive grant programs, as I've said, usually are for smaller amounts, and they are assessed in date and time order of which they are received. Okay, so that's why when an opportunity comes up, then it's thinking about the information I'm sharing with you today and seeking the support I'll talk through to get you ready so that you can apply when you have every opportunity to, as soon as the non-competitive grant program opens. So moving on. So I just wanted to highlight the differences there. Where to find grants? That is one of our most common inquiry. Our Business Tasmania website, if you are a for-profit business, and there are some not-for-profit programs there, but mostly for-profit businesses, we have a funding page on which we actually really spend a lot of time making sure that we are across any state and Australian government opportunities. Our friends at business.gov is another great place. That's our Australian government colleagues. And if anyone's joining us in the group today from events, we're looking at event grants or art grants or community grants, these are options that you can follow up as well. It's really, everyone running their business is, it's consuming, and, you're very time poor. So you want to know when there's a new opportunity without having to go to the website and search and spend time on that. So to be alerted about new grant opportunities, you can actually subscribe to our Business Tasmania newsletter, which is in the middle of the homepage on our website. And that's a great way of keeping in touch with opportunities that come up, new funding opportunities, but also topical news and important information. Community grant options are also available through those other two avenues I'm mentioning there. Support. So grant writing, for many people, it's not a normal thing that you do. It's not something that we learn as we're going through school, or most of us didn't learn going through school. So the support available to you is that, obviously, if it's one of our department grant programs, typically we are the ones to be talking to you and providing support. So it's making sure that we are there for you. But if it's not us, then every program has a contact officer, and that'll be listed in the program guidelines. So don't be shy in getting in touch with the contact officer at all. On our Business Tasmania website, you'll find resources available specifically for grant writing. A fantastic supporting tool for you is our grant writing handbook. And so we also on that page have like a grant writing tip and a link through to 2610's Communicating Clearly guide. And that's a really excellent guide to also have a look at, because that helps us to have a read and think about how we can write an application using plain English. Okay, people think that they have to use big words and make it really sound complicated. the easier it is to read, plain English, the better for assessors. So, yeah, the plain English guide is very good. So you've got that support there. But as I mentioned before, you've got the Tasmanian Business Advice Service and a new business support pilot program where you can use those free hours to access to help you write the grant application as well. And all good for a sounding board too. If you've got an idea for a project for a grant, they can always look at the criteria with you and help you to understand if they think it fits too. So there is fantastic support available for you. Program guidelines. So what I want to talk through is program guidelines are available for every grant program. And I guess you could think of them being the rule book, so to speak, instruction manual, whatever you want to think. And so whenever there are program guidelines available, whilst I will sort of really focus on some key areas of the guidelines through this presentation, it's incredibly important to read them from front to back. Absolutely, so that you don't miss a thing. Because if you miss things, that's when you might waste your time with the application or not include something that you should. So program guidelines are so very important to read, and any other supporting documentation that you'll see near the program guidelines. I know from our experience talking to businesses, what our small business unit does, which is where we sit within the department, is that we have a frequently asked questions document. So we put together a selection of questions that we know with our business hat on that you will be thinking, you'll be wanting to ask. So if there's ever a frequently asked questions document, please read that as well, because that gives you more information than what's in the program guidelines. And also, what we also try and do is a checklist. So anything that's put in front of you on a web page with the grant details, take advantage of it and use it all, because it's there to help you succeed. It's there to help you as much as you can to submit a winning grant application. So I mentioned that read it from front to back, the program guidelines, but some of the key things that you'll see in guidelines, and again, I would get out a highlighter so that you can highlight things that you are not sure of as you read it all through, and then you ring the contact officer and then ask all your questions. So every program guidelines has an aim or an objective. So what is it that this grant is trying to achieve with the money the government is making available? So that's always good to have a read of, to go, well, now that could answer your question whether you go forward or not, because is it my project, or is my service or product I want to get, does this fit within the grant program? Okay. Eligibility criteria. So every grant program, regardless of whether it's competitive or non-competitive, will have criteria that it's very black and white that you have to meet it. If you read something and you can answer it yourself, that actually know, I don't have that, or can't satisfy that requirement, then I would by all means double check but not progress, because eligibility criteria, it's just one of those things, you need to meet it. Otherwise, this isn't a good fit for you in terms of the grant program. Assessment criteria will be also a requirement if it's a competitive program. And with assessment criteria, when you do see it, again, you've got to meet the eligibility criteria, but assessment criteria is, I guess, answers in more detail, and the answers to all the assessment criteria are ranked So, for example, there might be 3 criteria. One of them is extremely important. It might be 50% of the score, and then it might be split against the other criteria. So it's very important that when you see assessment criteria, that you answer every part of every element of the assessment criteria, because often there'll be several pieces to the criteria. We're asking you for several different things for you to explain in your answer, and the importance of that answer is that you're going to be ranked against every other applicant when it is a competitive grant program. Eligible and ineligible grant expenditure. I mean, as you would it probably seems pretty straightforward. It's usually within the program guidelines. It gives very specific very specific examples of what you can use the money for, and also what you cannot use the money for. So very important to be mindful of that. Evidence. We'll talk more about evidence as we go through, but evidence is the support that you are required to submit with your application. Again, evidence is so very important, as is knowing when the application is due and if there are any acquittal requirements, which we will talk through. So I think I might have jumped the gun a little bit and got excited with the last slide, but I mentioned there making sure to answer questions thoroughly, and that, just make sure, and it's just, when you read the program guidelines, it's just absolutely so very important that you pick up the phone or send an email, and if you have any questions about the eligibility criteria, or if you think you might have what is required but you're just not sure, we don't want you to waste your time. We want you to be successful in the grant application. So it's just getting in touch and making sure that you have specifically the right information, the right evidence to make sure that everything is spot on. So again, it's just understanding what's required and making sure that you get the support needed. Mentioning the evidence. So evidence is very important, and near enough is not good enough, if you know what I mean. So if you're being asked for, say, for example, your tax return and turnover details for a specific year, or you might often have a choice of 2 years, that is what is required. You can't then look at a different year and supply the tax return for a different year, for example. So, again, if you read it and you think, oh, gee, I don't have that yet, I wonder if there's an alternative, such as a letter from my accountant, for example. It's again picking up the phone, asking the question, because evidence, whilst you provide answers to what is being asked of you, there will always be, I would say 99% of the cases of grants I've been dealing with in the last 12 years, evidence is almost always required. So it's important that you get the right evidence together and give yourself time, because nothing is worse than us. We've had many conversations with businesses stressed because they feel like they're running out of time, because they haven't left enough time to work through the evidence that's required, or getting things off their accountant, that kind of thing. And to, help save time for yourself, always setting up a folder on your computer, or someone who's helping you, getting them to sort of save all the relevant information, as well as your relevant evidence, I should say, as well as a copy of the guidelines, and frequently asked questions so you can easily refer back to it. Look, that's always, helpful, I have to say. Smarty grants. So Smarty Grants is as it says there, the online system that many Tasmanian government grants are used for. So it's an online system, but don't worry if you haven't used it before. That is something that we, particularly if it's one of our grants, can help you with. So with Smarty Grants, you actually, for our viewers today who haven't used Smarty Grants before, you create one logon, and that's the logon that you use for every grant application. So with Smarty Grants, you can actually, there's an option, and again, we can talk this through, of once you create a logon, is creating a Smarty file. Now, a Smarty file is an option whereby you can create a profile for your business. And you can actually nominate, if you've got a couple of staff that want to help with the grant application, then you can actually nominate them as users, and then they can also access the application and work on it together as well. So Smarty Files, if you're working on a grant application on your own, still advantage because you can actually create a profile, and then every time you fill out a grant application, your business details will pre-populate. So it does save you time. So I won't go too much into the detail of Smarty Grants, just to know online forms are on Smarty Grants that you'll be asked to complete. And the important thing to keep in mind is that if there is any communication, for example, a notification about the outcome of your grant, or on occasion, an assessor might have a question about what you've submitted, they will email you. So it's very important to keep an eye on the email that you may have used. And also checking your junk, because for some reason, sometimes they do go into junk mail. So, because if an assessor contacts you to ask for clarification about something, then they will typically give you a time frame by which you need to reply. And so it's important to keep an eye out just so you don't miss those emails. And so depending on whether or not you've created an email for your Smarty Grants logon, if for some reason you've used a different email in the application, which happens, we do talk to people who do use different emails, keep an eye on both, because depending on which area within government, they may have a process in place to communicate with the one or the other. So I just wanted to flag that, because I know from our experience it is easy to miss some of these emails, aside from, finding out if you've been successful or not. If we want to get in touch, keep an eye on the emails. So it's leaving plenty of time to finish your application. So what we will do at the end of the Q&A, if there's time, is we'll have a quick look at Smarty Grants and an example of a program guidelines. But if we don't get that opportunity because of our timing, then you can come back to us and call the Business Tasmania team when it suits you, and we can give you a run through individually as well of what you need to know just to get ready, because you can set up your Smarty Grants log on ready for a grant application at some point in the future. So with Smarty Grants, you can start and save as many times as you want, okay? And it's really, really important to know, particularly, well, with any grant application, that the actual application is not submitted and put in front of the assessor, so to speak, until you submit the actual, click on the submit button and before the closing date and time, and also making sure that you have every bit of evidence and every bit of information, putting your best foot forward in the grant application. So if you've started an application, and particularly this is relevant with non-competitive grants, which are assessed in time and date order, if you've started, it doesn't mean you've got a place in the queue, so to speak, because you've started already. It isn't until you actually click that button and submit it that it's actually submitted and it's ready to be assessed. So it's really important to know that, okay? Common pitfalls. So we talk to so many, as I said, we talk to so many people, and a lot of requests we get are for late submissions of applications, and it's a no. So please always allow yourself enough time, and thinking about language, plain English. You don't need to make it complicated. It's just simply describing what it is you're trying to achieve with the grant application, addressing all parts of the question. If you have someone who can proofread for you, that's always a great idea. It could be as well, one of our advisors may well be happy to proofread with some of your hours as well. So it's just good that extra set of eyes is always valuable if you can. The right evidence absolutely is essential. You'd be correct bank details. You'd be very surprised at how often people don't put the correct bank details in, and that slows things down for the applicant if they are successful. And so it's not helpful for anyone if the bank details are not correct. And really, with the checking address details and business name on the tax invoice that you need to supply with your application, it's very important that it matches. And if it differs, that you need to put an explanation in. For example, the bank statement is sent to the director's home address. Something like that, just so the assessor's not scratching their head and trying to draw the dots. You want to make it as easy and as clear for them to understand all of your details. So what happens when you click submit? What should happen when you click submit, if you've actually clicked it and you're sure of that, is that you'll get a confirmation email within 10 minutes. So if that does not arrive, I would immediately pick up the phone after you've checked your junk folder and get in touch with the contact person. So in terms of timeframes, program guidelines should always tell you what to expect. And they, from my experience, they do. So you can understand what the expectations are, when you'll find out, which everyone is always very keen to actually find out whether you've been successful or not. And of course, keeping your eye on those emails is so very important. If you are successful or not, you will get an email. And if you are fortunate enough to receive a grant, the email will describe what happens next, okay, and what to expect in terms of when you get the money. So it'll be very clear, and it will be very different for every grant application. If you're not successful, it's so very important, if you feel when you're ready, to ask for feedback and ask for the reason why that you were not successful, so that you can learn from that if there is a reason. I mean, sometimes some people are not successful because the funding was allocated before their grant application was assessed. So in those situations, that's certainly different. But if there's a reason that you've been deemed ineligible, then it's always great to ask so that you can learn for the future and keep a record. And so that you have a bit of a file so that you can keep learning about, how to have more success with winning grants. Acquitting your grant. Okay, so if you are successful and you've got a grant, which would be fabulous, there is an acquittal process. So what that basically means is that the government is actually delivering a grant program, and it's a requirement that to ensure that public funding, so all the money that we pay taxes for, obviously we contribute to that, is actually administered appropriately, fairly, and it's spent in the way in which the applicant has said it will. So the acquittal process for, again, the majority of the grant programs, there will be a requirement to acquit and confirm that, yes, you have then gone and purchased that item. You've got approval to actually use the grant money for, or yes, this is where my project is at, and this is, yes, it has been delivered. So again, if you are successful, then this will be something that will be explained in the actual email that you get. So don't worry about this too much. There will be guidance for you. Okay. So the key is thinking about the support available to you. And there is so much support, and accessing Business Tasmania and the business advice services, and also the guidebook, the grant writing guidebook on our website. So there's a lot of support out there, and what I've covered today are some tips and things to think about when you're reading grant guidelines, and knowing what to look for, what to look out for, and when to ask questions. So at that point, what I might do is just stop sharing my screen and actually open it to questions if anyone has their virtual hand raised. Or Bronwyn May will have some questions that she might like to ask on behalf of the group. If not, I'll jump through the website very shortly if we don't have any questions.